power in East Haven looked like routine. Patrol cars idling on corners, officers nodding to neighbors. Trouble never far for those who stood out. When 3 police officers stopped 16-year-old Tiana Coleman walking home, they saw only a quiet black girl. An easy target, alone and defenseless. Their show of force became violence, a lesson meant to teach her fear. But one phone call from her bruised hands would change everything, because what they didn't know was that her father is the director of the FBI, and no badge could shield them from what was coming. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The evening sun cast long shadows across East Haven's cracked sidewalks as Tiana Coleman walked home from her shift at Marshall's grocery. Her work apron was folded neatly in her backpack, replaced by her favorite purple hoodie. The air felt heavy with the day's lingering heat, but something else, too. A tension that had become all too familiar in their small town. Tiana's phone buzzed with another text from Jasmine. She smiled, pulling it out to read, "Girl, you're gonna rock that Harvard interview next month. They'd be crazy not to want you." "Thanks, Jay," Tiana typed back. "Just need to finish that scholarship essay first. Mom says dreams are good, but backup plans are better." She added a laughing emoji, thinking of her mother's practical wisdom. The streetlights were just starting to flicker on as she approached the intersection of Oak and Madison. The familiar storefronts, Joe's Hardware, Crown Cleaners, and the old movie theater, stood as silent witnesses to decades of East Haven's history. Some still had faded Black Lives Matter signs in their windows, remnants of protests from 2 summers ago. A police cruiser's engine rumbled behind her, moving slowly. Too slowly. Tiana kept walking, her heart beginning to pound despite her best efforts to stay calm. The cruiser's tires crunched over loose gravel as it pulled alongside her. "Evening, miss," called out a voice, thick with false sweetness. "Mind stopping for a moment?" Tiana turned to face Sergeant Durling, his pale face illuminated by the dashboard lights. Officer Knox sat in the passenger seat, already reaching for his door handle. "Is there a problem, officer?" Tiana asked, keeping her voice steady and polite, just as her parents had taught her. Her phone was still in her hand, and she subtly pressed the emergency recording button. Another lesson learned from too many similar stories. "Random check, that's all," Durling said, stepping out of the car. His hand rested casually on his belt, too close to his baton. "Got some reports of suspicious activity in the area." Across the street, Mrs. Chen from the laundromat had stopped sweeping her storefront. Mr. Washington, walking his dog, slowed his pace. Phones began to appear in hands, recording what was unfolding. "I'm just walking home from work," Tiana explained, gesturing to her backpack. "It's only 3 blocks from here." Officer Knox circled behind her. "Lot of attitude there, young lady. Why don't you show us some ID?" "I'm 16, sir. I have my school ID." Tiana reached slowly for her backpack, making sure her movements were clear and visible. "Awful nice backpack for a grocery store worker," Durling commented, his tone sharpening. "Where'd you get that?" "It was a birthday gift from my parents." Tiana's fingers trembled slightly as she pulled out her wallet. More people had gathered on the sidewalk now, their presence both comforting and concerning. A second patrol car pulled up, its lights cutting through the growing darkness. Officer Ricks emerged, his massive frame blocking the glow of a nearby streetlight. "Everything okay here, Sergeant?" Ricks asked, though his eyes never left Tiana. "Just having a chat with this one," Durling replied. "Seems she thinks the rules don't apply in her neighborhood." "I'm following all the rules, sir," Tiana said firmly, though her mouth had gone dry. "I've shown my ID, and I'm simply trying to get home." "That mouth of yours is going to get you in trouble," Knox warned, stepping closer. The circle of officers tightened around her. Someone in the growing crowd called out, "Leave her alone! She's just a kid." Back up! Durling barked at the onlookers. This is police business. Tiana could feel the situation spiraling. The air crackled with tension as more phones recorded the scene. Mrs. Chen had moved closer, her broom clutched like a weapon. Mr. Washington's dog growled low in its throat. "Am I being detained?" Tiana asked, fighting to keep her voice from shaking. "Because if not, I'd like to continue walking home." Durling's face darkened. "Oh, you'd like that, would you?" His hand moved from his belt to grip his baton. Hands against the wall. Now. What? Tiana stepped back, confused and frightened. "I haven't done anything wrong." "Resisting," Knox announced with grim satisfaction. "Always resisting." The crowd's voices grew louder, angry protests mixing with urgent warnings. Rix cracked his knuckles, a sound that seemed to echo in the growing darkness. Durling's baton made a soft clicking sound as he extended it, the metal catching the last rays of sunlight. Tiana stood her ground, though every instinct screamed at her to run. Her phone was still recording, capturing every moment as the three officers closed in around her, their faces masks of authority twisted into something uglier, something hungry for violence. "Please," she whispered, but not in fear, in warning. "Don't do this!" The crowd surged forward, their shouts rising to a crescendo. Phones recorded from every angle as Durling raised his baton, his smile cold and certain in the gathering dusk. "Stop! Don't touch me!" Tiana's voice cut through the chaos as Durling's hands grabbed her shoulders. The crowd's angry shouts echoed off the storefronts, bouncing between the old brick buildings of Oak Street. "Stop resisting!" Knox barked, seizing her arm with bruising force. "I'm not resisting! You're hurting me!" Tiana tried to maintain her balance as the officers pushed and pulled her from different directions. Her phone pressed against her hip in her hoodie pocket, still recording everything. Durling's face twisted with rage. "On the ground! Now!" He kicked the back of her knees, sending her crashing onto the concrete sidewalk. Pain shot through her palms as she tried to break her fall. "Please, I haven't done anything." Tiana curled instinctively as the first blow from the baton struck her back. The crowd surged forward, their horrified screams mixing with her own. "Stay back!" Rix roared, pulling out his taser and aiming it at the onlookers. "Anyone steps closer gets dropped." Another strike landed across Tiana's shoulders. She tried to protect her head with her arms as kicks began landing against her ribs. The rough concrete scraped her cheek as they pushed her face down. "Stop! She's just a child!" Mrs. Chen's voice cracked with desperation. She took a step forward, still clutching her broom. "Last warning!" Knox pulled out his pepper spray, sweeping it in a threatening arc toward the crowd. People stumbled backward, phones still raised and recording. Blood from Tiana's nose dripped onto the sidewalk. Each breath sent stabbing pain through her chest. "Help!" she screamed, tasting copper in her mouth. "Somebody help me!" Mr. Washington, his silver hair gleaming under the streetlights, broke from the crowd. "This is murder! You're going to kill her!" He shuffled forward with his cane raised. Rix spun around and shoved the elderly man hard. Mr. Washington fell backward, his cane clattering across the concrete. His dog lunged forward, barking furiously, until someone grabbed its leash. "Get back, old man, or you're next!" Rix sneered, turning back to where Durling and Knox continued their assault on Tiana. The beating seemed endless. Each second stretched into an eternity of pain and terror. Tiana could hear people crying in the crowd, prayers mixing with curses. Her phone dug into her hip as she twisted away from another kick, knowing it was still recording, still uploading everything to her cloud storage. "Thought you were smart, didn't you?" Durling panted between strikes. "Thought you could disrespect the law?" "Please," Tiana gasped. "I can't breathe." Another blow cut off her words. Knox grabbed her arms, wrenching them behind her back. The cold metal of handcuffs bit into her wrists, too tight, pinching her skin. "Not so mouthy now, are you?" Through swollen eyes, Tiana saw more phones recording, their lights like stars in the darkness that had fallen over East Haven. She silently prayed the footage would make it out, would show the world what was happening. "Get her up," Durling commanded, grabbing a fistful of Tiana's hair. They yanked her to her feet, ignoring her cry of pain as her shoulders screamed in protest. Mrs. Chen had helped Mr. Washington up. The old man's face was streaked with tears as he leaned heavily on his cane. "We saw everything," he shouted. "The whole world will see what you did." "Clear a path," Rix ordered, shoving people aside as they dragged Tiana toward the patrol car. Her legs barely worked, each step sending fresh waves of agony through her body. The crowd followed, their phones still recording. Someone was calling 911, demanding help. Others shouted that they had everything on video, that the officers couldn't hide what they'd done. They reached the cruiser, its lights still flashing in the full darkness that had descended. Knox opened the back door while Durling and Rix held Tiana up. "This isn't over!" someone yelled from the crowd. "We won't let you get away with this." "Watch us," Durling smirked, roughly shoving Tiana into the back seat. Her head hit the door frame, adding another burst of pain to the symphony of hurt that was her body. The door slammed shut, muffling the crowd's voices. Through the window, Tiana could see Mrs. Chen holding Mr. Washington as he wept. Other faces pressed close, their phones still raised, still witnessing. The officers climbed in, laughing and congratulating each other. The engine roared to life, and the cruiser peeled away from the curb, leaving the shaken crowd behind in a cloud of exhaust. Tiana slumped against the seat, tasting blood and tears. Her phone pressed against her leg, a small comfort in knowing it was still recording, still sending evidence of everything that had happened into the digital cloud, where they couldn't reach it. The streetlights flashed by outside as they sped through the darkened streets of East Haven, taking her away from her community, but not from the truth they had all witnessed. The patrol car jerked to a stop in front of the East Haven police station, its headlights illuminating the brick facade. Tiana's whole body ached, each breath sending sharp pains through her ribs. Her face felt swollen and tight, one eye nearly closed from the beating. "Welcome to your new home, Princess," Durling sneered, yanking open the back door. The fluorescent lights from the station entrance made her wince. Knox grabbed her arm, pulling her roughly from the car. Her legs buckled, but they didn't let her fall. Instead, they half-dragged her up the concrete steps and through the heavy glass doors. The station's lobby was empty, except for a bored-looking desk sergeant who barely glanced up from his crossword puzzle. The linoleum floors squeaked under their boots as they marched her down a dingy hallway, lined with wanted posters and outdated safety notices. "Processing room," Rix announced, shoving open a metal door. The small room stank of stale coffee and sweat. A single camera blinked in the corner, its red light steady and accusatory. They pushed Tiana into a hard plastic chair. Her handcuffs rattled against the metal back. Blood from her split lip had dried on her chin, making her skin feel tight and itchy. "So, here's how this goes," Durling said, leaning against the wall. He started wiping his knuckles with a tissue, red stains spreading across the white paper. "You attacked 3 police officers during a routine stop. We were forced to defend ourselves." "That's not what happened." Tiana's voice came out hoarse but steady. "Everyone saw. They were all recording." Knox laughed, a harsh barking sound. "Funny thing about phone videos, they have a way of disappearing." He pulled out his own phone, tapping the screen. "Just like our body cam footage seems to have gotten corrupted. Technical difficulties, you know how it is." "I want my phone call," Tiana said, forcing herself to meet Derling's eyes, despite the fear churning in her stomach. "Phone call," Rix mocked. "This isn't TV, sweetheart. You're looking at serious charges. Assaulting an officer, resisting arrest, disturbing the peace." "I have the right to a phone call," Tiana insisted, her heart pounding but her voice remaining firm. "It's the law." Derling pushed off the wall, getting right in her face. His breath smelled like mint gum and cigarettes. "You want to talk about law? How about I add a few more charges? Maybe we found drugs in your pocket. Maybe you tried to grab my gun." "I want my phone call," Tiana repeated, fighting to keep her voice from shaking. "Now." The officers exchanged looks. Knox shrugged. "Let her call her mommy. Maybe that'll make her more cooperative." "Fine," Derling spat. He pulled Tiana's phone from an evidence bag, holding it just out of reach. "One call. Make it quick." With her hands still cuffed behind her, Tiana had to awkwardly turn as Derling held the phone to her ear. Her fingers found the familiar pattern to unlock it, muscle memory taking over as she dialed her father's number. It rang twice before Samuel Coleman's voice came through, clear and strong. "Tiana, where are you? It's past your curfew." "Daddy," she choked out, tears finally breaking through her careful control. "I'm at the police station. They hurt me, Dad." "Bad." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. "What happened? Are you injured?" "3 officers stopped me walking home," Tiana explained between sobs, trying to get the important details out quickly. "They beat me on Oak Street. There were witnesses. Everyone was recording. They're trying to say I attacked them. But Dad, I didn't. I didn't do anything wrong." "Which station?" Samuel's voice had gone cold and hard, a tone Tiana had never heard before. "East Haven. Please hurry," she whispered. "I'm scared." "Listen to me carefully, baby girl," Samuel said, and Tiana could hear movement in the background, papers rustling, doors opening. "I'm handling this right now. You stay strong. Don't sign anything. Don't admit to anything. I'm coming." "Time's up." Derling grabbed the phone away, but not before Tiana caught a glimpse of her father's face on the screen. His features twisted with a fury she'd never seen before. "Daddy's going to fix everything?" Knox mocked, making his voice high and childish. "Guess what, princess? Daddy can't help you now. You're in our world. You should have just kept your mouth shut and shown some respect," Rix added, cracking his knuckles menacingly. Tiana sat up straighter despite the pain, despite her fear. She could still hear her father's words echoing in her head. "Stay strong. My father will be here soon," she said quietly. "Oh, yeah?" Derling leaned down again, his smile cruel. "And who's your daddy? The mayor? Superman?" Tiana met his gaze steadily. She didn't answer, just watched as he straightened up and walked to the door, still wiping dried blood from his hands. "Get comfortable," he called over his shoulder. "You're going to be here a while. Plenty of time to think about changing your story." The door slammed shut behind them, leaving Tiana alone in the harsh, fluorescent light. Her body throbbed with pain, but her mind was clear. Her father was coming. And unlike these officers, she knew exactly who Samuel Coleman was, and what the director of the FBI could do. Samuel Coleman's office in the J. Edgar Hoover building erupted into action. His fingers flew across his phone, sending rapid-fire texts while barking orders into his desk phone. "I want a full tactical team in East Haven, within 2 hours. Get me Judge Martinez on the line. We need emergency warrants. And someone find out who's running that precinct." His voice carried through the open door, bringing agents running. "Sir, we've got reports coming in from social media," Agent Torres said, tablet in hand. "Multiple videos of the assault are spreading. The crowd size outside the station is growing." Samuel's jaw clenched as he watched one of the videos. The sight of his daughter being thrown to the ground made his hands shake. Get me everything on Officers Durling, Knox, and Ricks. I want their complete records, complaints, disciplinary actions, everything. Outside the East Haven police station, the crowd had swelled to over 100 people. Mrs. Hightower, the retired high school principal, stood at the front, her silver hair gleaming under the streetlights. "Free Tiana Coleman!" the crowd chanted. "Justice now!" Inside the station, Sergeant Durling paced nervously. "Something's not right. That girl's too calm. Probably just some community college professor's kid," Knox said, but his voice wavered. Acting all high and mighty, the station's front doors burst open. A team of FBI agents in tactical gear streamed in, led by Assistant Director Chen. "This is a federal intervention. Everyone stay where you are." The desk sergeant jumped to his feet, coffee spilling across his crossword puzzle. "What the hell?" "By order of the Justice Department, this station is temporarily under federal jurisdiction," Chen announced, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Officers Durling, Knox, and Ricks are to surrender their badges and weapons immediately." Durling's face went pale. "On what grounds?" "Civil rights violations, excessive force, falsifying evidence," Chen read from a tablet. "And that's just for starters." Federal marshals moved through the station, securing exits and gathering evidence. In the processing room, Agent Torres gently helped Tiana to her feet, removing the handcuffs. "You're safe now," she said softly, wrapping a blanket around Tiana's shoulders. "We're getting you medical attention." Dawn was breaking as news vans began arriving. Reporters thrust microphones toward the station entrance, cameras rolling as the three officers were escorted out in handcuffs. "This is Sarah Chen with Channel 7 News. Live outside East Haven Police Station, where a dramatic federal raid has just taken place." A black SUV pulled up, and Samuel Coleman stepped out. The crowd parted as he rushed up the steps, his face tight with concern. "Daddy!" Tiana's cry carried across the lobby. She ran to him, ignoring her injuries, and he caught her in a fierce embrace. "I'm here, baby girl," he whispered, holding her carefully. "I'm here now." The medical team insisted on taking Tiana to the hospital. Samuel rode with her, holding her hand as doctors documented her injuries: 3 bruised ribs, a concussion, multiple contusions. By afternoon, they were home. The Coleman house buzzed with activity as federal protection teams set up security perimeters. Inside, Tiana's mother, Grace, hadn't stopped crying since seeing her daughter's injuries. "We should have moved years ago," Grace said, setting plates on the dinner table. Her hands trembled. "This town—" "We're not running," Samuel said firmly. "We're going to fix this the right way." They sat down to a quiet dinner, the first moment of peace since the nightmare began. Tiana picked at her food, wincing as she shifted in her chair. "The officers are suspended," Samuel assured her. "We've got round-the-clock protection. Nobody's going to hurt you again." "I keep seeing their faces," Tiana admitted quietly. "When they were." "When they—" Grace reached across the table, squeezing her daughter's hand. "You're safe now, baby." Samuel's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He stepped into the kitchen to answer it. "Director Coleman," a distorted voice said. "Quite a show today." Through the window, Samuel noticed an unmarked police cruiser rolling past the house. Then another. "Who is this?" "Just a concerned citizen," the voice continued. "Things work differently here in East Haven. Always have. You'd be smart to remember that." "Is that a threat?" Samuel's voice was ice cold. "Let's call it friendly advice. Drop this now. Take your daughter home to D.C., or we'll bury you both so deep even the FBI won't find you." The line went dead. Samuel stood in the dark kitchen, watching more unmarked cars circle the block like sharks. His daughter's laughter drifted in from the dining room, fragile but healing. He gripped the phone tightly, his decision already made. They weren't going anywhere. East Haven had no idea what kind of fight they'd just started. Tiana woke to the sound of helicopters. The morning sun barely filtered through her bedroom window, blocked by something outside. She pushed aside her curtains and froze. Armed state troopers lined their street, dressed in riot gear. Military-style vehicles blocked both ends of the road. A helicopter circled overhead, its spotlight sweeping across houses in the pre-dawn gloom. "Dad!" she called out, her voice cracking. "Mom!" Samuel burst into her room, still in his pajamas. His face hardened as he took in the scene. "Grace, turn on the TV!" he shouted down the hall. The living room television blared to life. Mayor Walter Bixby's smooth face filled the screen, standing at a podium outside City Hall. "Due to ongoing civil unrest and threats to public safety, I am declaring a state of emergency in East Haven," Bixby announced. "For the protection of all citizens, the state police will temporarily assume control of law enforcement duties. A mandatory curfew will be in effect from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. Grace's hands flew to her mouth. "They can't do this." Samuel's phone buzzed. He answered, pacing the living room. "What do you mean, stand down?" he growled into the device. "I have jurisdiction here." "No, sir, you don't understand." A sharp knock at the front door made them all jump. Two state troopers stood on the porch, their faces stern behind mirrored sunglasses. "Director Coleman," the first one said, "by order of the governor, we're here to establish a protective detail for your family." "We don't need protection," Samuel replied coldly. "It's not optional, sir." The trooper handed him a document. "For your safety, all communications will be monitored. Please limit unnecessary travel." Tiana's phone chirped. The screen displayed "no service" before going dark. The home's Wi-Fi connection disappeared seconds later. "This is for your own good," the second trooper said, his hand resting on his holster. "There are dangerous elements in this community." Grace turned the TV volume up as breaking news flashed across the screen. The three officers who had beaten Tiana stood outside the police union building, newly released. Sergeant Durling stepped to the microphones, his uniform crisp and clean. "What happened that night was tragic," Durling said, his voice thick with fake emotion. "But the public doesn't have the full story. We were attacked while performing our duties." The screen split to show grainy footage. Tiana watched in horror as a doctored video played, showing her throwing the first punch, the angles carefully chosen to hide the officer's brutality. "That's a lie!" she screamed at the TV. "That's not what happened." Her trembling fingers opened her cloud storage account. The real video should be there, automatically uploaded during the attack. But when she clicked the file, her heart stopped. The thumbnail showed the same doctored footage being broadcast on TV. No, no, no. She scrolled frantically through her files. Everything from that night was gone, replaced with the fake version. "Dad, they hacked my account. They changed the video." Samuel was still on his phone, his voice rising. "Listen to me, Deputy Director. This is a cover-up." "What do you mean, political considerations? My daughter was assaulted." A text message popped up on his screen from an unknown number. "Back off, Coleman. Some battles aren't worth fighting." Outside, more state police vehicles arrived. Officers set up checkpoints at every intersection, checking IDs of anyone trying to enter the neighborhood. Mrs. Hightower attempted to bring them groceries but was turned away. "This is still America!" the elderly woman shouted as they forced her to leave. "You can't cage people in their own homes." Tiana's social media filled with conflicting messages. Some friends posted support. Others shared the doctored video with angry comments about police haters and troublemakers. News channels debated the footage, questioning her character, digging into her family's past. "Mom!" Tiana called out, hearing sobs from her parents' bedroom. She found Grace curled up on the bed, shoulders shaking. "I can't watch them destroy you," Grace whispered. "First the beating, now these lies." Samuel's phone rang again. This time it was Agent Torres, her voice urgent. "Director, something's wrong. Our evidence is disappearing. Files are being corrupted. Witnesses are recanting. Someone's blocking us from inside the bureau." Through the window, Tiana watched another state police cruiser roll past, moving slowly, deliberately. The officer inside stared directly at her, his face hidden behind dark glasses. She clutched her useless phone, the blank screen reflecting her bruised face. The true battle wasn't just about one night of violence anymore. This was about power, about who controlled the truth itself. And right now, the truth was being erased, rewritten, twisted into a weapon against her. A camera flash from across the street caught her eye. Someone was photographing their house. The state troopers did nothing to stop them. They weren't there to protect the Colemans. They were there to watch them, to contain them, to make sure they couldn't fight back. Tiana sat on the living room couch, watching the first rays of sunlight creep across the carpet. She hadn't slept all night. Neither had her father. Samuel stood by the window, his FBI phone disconnected on the coffee table, staring at the state troopers who had maintained their position throughout the dark hours. "They're changing shifts," he muttered, noting the fresh officers arriving in crisp uniforms. "They've got this planned down to the minute." Tiana's body ached from the beating, but the emotional pain cut deeper. Why aren't more people speaking up? There were witnesses everywhere. Samuel turned from the window, his face etched with worry. "Because they're scared, baby. And with good reason." As if to confirm his words, Tiana's burner phone, secretly passed to her by Mrs. Hightower's grandson, buzzed with messages from the community group chat. "They broke all the windows at First Baptist last night," she read aloud, her voice trembling. "Spray-painted liars across the front steps." Samuel clenched his fists. "Reverend Jackson's church. He was there when they—" He couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't say, "when they beat you." More messages poured in. The Williams family, who'd shared their video of the assault, found their car tires slashed. Old Mr. Turner, who'd tried to help Tiana that night, was arrested for an unpaid parking ticket from 1992. Mrs. Washington's daycare center was suddenly facing surprise health inspections. A soft tap at the back door made them both jump. Jasmine stood there, eyes wide with fear, glancing over her shoulder. Samuel quickly let her in through the kitchen. "I had to crawl through 3 backyards to get here," Jasmine whispered, hugging Tiana tight. "They're watching my house, too." Tiana felt her friend trembling. "What happened?" Tears welled in Jasmine's eyes. "2 officers came to my dad's shop yesterday. Said they found some irregularities in his business permits. Then they mentioned my little brother's school records. How sad it would be if he lost his scholarship." She wiped her eyes roughly. "They said I need to stop hanging out with troublemakers if I want my family to stay safe." Samuel's phone rang, one of the few lines still working. He answered on speaker. "Coleman." "Samuel, it's Marcus in the Civil Rights Division." The voice sounded strained. "Listen, all our subpoenas for the body cam footage were just denied. Judge Whitmore claims national security concerns." "That's impossible," Samuel snapped. "What national security?" "They're saying the protests could attract terrorist elements. It's nonsense, but it's working. Half my team just got reassigned to field offices across the country. Someone's pulling strings way above my pay grade." After the call, Samuel tried reaching out to his media contacts. Each time, he got the same response. Stories were being killed by editors. Evidence was vanishing. Sources were going silent. Around noon, Mrs. Hightower managed to get a message through via her grandson's video game chat. "Prayer meeting. Tonight. Back room of Carter's barbershop. Come separate." Watch for tails. I'm going, Tiana declared before her father could object. It's too dangerous, Samuel started, but Grace cut him off. She needs to be there, her mother said firmly. Our people need to see her standing strong. They spent hours planning the route, timing the police patrols. As dusk approached, Tiana slipped out through the neighbor's cellar, while Samuel created a distraction by loudly arguing with the troopers about his constitutional rights. Carter's barber shop was dark, but the back room glowed with candlelight. 20 community leaders sat in a tight circle: church elders, teachers, small business owners. Mrs. Hightower stood as Tiana entered, pulling her into a fierce embrace. "Child, we are so proud of you," the pastor whispered. "Don't you let them break your spirit." They shared updates in hushed voices. The intimidation was spreading. Phone lines cut. Internet disrupted. Strange cars following children home from school. But there was strength in their unity, in the shared determination in their eyes. Mrs. Hightower led them in prayer, her rich voice steady and defiant. "Lord, we've seen this darkness before. We survived night riders and fire hoses. We'll survive this too." Tiana made it home just before curfew. The house was quiet except for the hum of the police radios outside. Then a shout pierced the night. "Fire!" They rushed to the front windows. In their yard, illuminating the darkness with hellish light, stood a burning cross. The flames reached toward the sky, casting twisted shadows across the manicured lawn that had once felt so safe. But they weren't alone. Even as Samuel called 911, knowing the police wouldn't come, neighbors emerged from their homes. Old Mr. Turner, fresh out of jail, brought his garden hose. The Washington sisters arrived with buckets. Mrs. Hightower appeared like a warrior angel, wielding a fire extinguisher in each hand. Together, they fought the flames while the state troopers watched impassively from their posts. When the last ember died, they stood in a circle around the scorched earth, choking on smoke, but unbowed. "Let them come," Mrs. Hightower declared, her voice carrying in the darkness. "Every cross they burn just lights up their shame for the world to see." Tiana looked at the faces around her, illuminated by the streetlights. Neighbors, friends, family, all risking everything just by standing there. The fear was real, but so was their courage. So was their love. The state troopers' radios crackled with reports of suspicious gatherings. But nobody moved. They held their ground in the smoky dark, a quiet act of defiance under the watching stars. The morning sun revealed the full extent of the vandalism at First Baptist Church. Tiana stood before the spray-painted walls, her hands shaking with anger. "Liars!" screamed at her in red paint, dripping like blood down the white siding. Shattered glass from the stained windows crunched under her feet. Mrs. Hightower emerged from the church doors, her shoulders straight despite the exhaustion in her eyes. She carried a broom in one hand and a bucket in the other. "They think this will silence us," she said, setting down her cleaning supplies. "But every broken window just lets God's light shine through in a new way." Tiana helped the older woman sweep glass into neat piles. "I can't believe they're getting away with this." "For now," Mrs. Hightower corrected. She paused her sweeping and looked down the street. "We have company." A tall white man in civilian clothes approached cautiously, hands visible at his sides. Tiana recognized him as one of the younger officers from the station, though he wasn't wearing his uniform today. "Officer Travis," Mrs. Hightower said coolly. "Just Luke now," he replied, his voice tight. "They suspended me this morning. Said I was undermining department morale by asking too many questions about what happened to Tiana." Mrs. Hightower studied him for a long moment. "Come help us sweep, Luke. We can talk while we work." As they cleaned together, Luke shared what he knew. Chief Mattis has been covering up incidents like this for years, but he's careful, keeps the real evidence off the police servers. I tried accessing the body cam footage from that night, but it's already gone. A familiar voice called out from behind them. That's because it's on his private server. They turned to see Jasmine standing there, wringing her hands nervously. Tiana felt a mix of joy and worry, seeing her friend out in the open like this. "What do you mean?" Luke asked. Jasmine glanced around before continuing. "Last summer, I was doing volunteer work at the station. Heard the chief talking about his insurance policy. A server at his house, where he keeps sensitive stuff. Said it was the only way to make sure nobody could hack in through the department's network." Mrs. Hightower's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "The mansion on Hill Street? With all those security cameras?" Luke nodded. "He's got a state-of-the-art system. Guards posted 24/7. But I know the rotation schedule, and there's a blind spot in the coverage near the backwoods." They gathered in the church office, away from prying eyes. Using paper and pencil to avoid any electronic surveillance, they sketched out the mansion's layout based on Luke's knowledge. Jasmine's computer skills could help them access the server, if they could get inside. "It's dangerous," Mrs. Hightower warned. "If you're caught, we're already in danger," Tiana replied. "At least this way we're fighting back." They spent hours planning every detail. Luke knew which guards could be trusted, and which were firmly in Mattis's pocket. Jasmine mapped out the likely location of the server room based on the house's electrical setup. Mrs. Hightower would coordinate from her house nearby, ready to create a distraction if needed. Around mid-afternoon, Tiana slipped home to prepare. She found her father in his study, surrounded by files and dead-end phone numbers. "Daddy," she said softly, "I need your help with something. But you can't ask too many questions." Samuel looked at her for a long moment. Then he opened his desk drawer and pulled out a small recording device. "Wear this," he said, showing her how to activate it. "Whatever you're planning, and I don't want to know. At least there will be evidence if anything goes wrong." The device was smaller than a button, easily hidden in her jacket seam. "How did you get this past them?" she asked, knowing their house was being watched. "I have friends too," he said simply. "Old friends who remember what it was like before, who know how to move things quietly." He hugged her tight. "Be careful, baby. Be smart." As sunset approached, Tiana made her way through backyards and side streets to the meeting point. The others were already there, crouched in the shadows of the trees behind Chief Mattis's property. The mansion loomed ahead, its windows glowing with warm light that felt like a mockery of comfort. Luke did one final check of their equipment. Dark clothes, gloves, small flashlights, Jasmine's laptop in a silent mode that wouldn't trigger any electronic sensors. Mrs. Hightower pressed something into Tiana's hand, a small cross on a chain. "For protection," she whispered, "and to remember who you're really fighting for." They watched the guard rotation Luke had predicted, right on schedule. The security lights swept across the manicured lawn in steady patterns. In the growing darkness, Tiana could make out the small garden shed that would provide their first cover, and beyond it, the back door that Luke swore would be accessible. Jasmine's hands trembled as she double-checked her computer setup. "I've never done anything like this before," she whispered. "None of us have," Tiana replied, squeezing her friend's shoulder. "But we're doing it together." The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in deep purples and blues. Soon, it would be dark enough to move. They huddled close in the warm evening air, each lost in their own thoughts and fears, waiting for full darkness to provide their cover. Mrs. Hightower's voice cut through the tension, barely a whisper. "Remember, you're not alone. The whole community is with you in spirit, even if they can't be here in person." The light faded minute by minute, and the weight of what they were about to attempt settled over them like a heavy blanket. But there was no turning back now. The truth they needed was inside that house, and they were going to find it. Darkness settled over the woods behind Chief Mattis's mansion like a heavy curtain. Tiana's heart pounded as she crawled through thick underbrush, following Luke's silent hand signals. The massive house loomed ahead, its windows glowing with warm yellow light that seemed to mock their mission. Mrs. Hightower moved with surprising stealth for her age, staying low and steady. Jasmine clutched her laptop bag close, her breathing quick and shallow. They paused at the tree line, watching the security lights sweep across the manicured lawn in predictable patterns. "Wait for my signal," Luke whispered, checking his watch. "Guard change in 3 minutes." Tiana touched the small recording device hidden in her jacket seam, drawing comfort from its presence. The cross Mrs. Hightower had given her felt warm against her skin. She studied the house's layout, 3 stories of brick and arrogance, with a partially sunken basement level visible from their position. Luke raised his hand as 2 guards walked past, their footsteps crunching on gravel. The moment they rounded the corner, he waved the group forward. They sprinted in pairs across the open ground, diving behind a row of carefully trimmed hedges. The motion sensors Luke had warned about created invisible lines across the property. He guided them through the safe zones, moving in short bursts between patches of shadow. Sweat trickled down Tiana's back despite the cool evening air. They reached the basement window Luke had identified. He produced a small tool and worked at the lock while the others kept watch. The window creaked open with agonizing slowness. "Mrs. Hightower, you're sure about staying outside?" Tiana whispered. The older woman nodded. "I'll be more useful as lookout. Plus, these old knees aren't made for climbing through windows anymore." She squeezed Tiana's hand. "Be careful, child." One by one, they slipped through the window into a musty storage room. Their flashlights revealed shelves of old files and boxes. Luke led them down a narrow hallway, past a laundry room, and what looked like a wine cellar. "Server room should be through here," he murmured, stopping at a heavy door with an electronic keypad. "Jasmine?" Jasmine pulled out her laptop and a small device she'd built. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, bypassing the security system. The lock clicked open with a soft beep. Inside, rows of humming servers cast a pale blue glow. File cabinets lined the walls, and a desk held multiple monitors. The air felt thick with artificial cold from the cooling systems. "Start with the most recent files," Luke suggested, standing guard by the door. The footage would have been uploaded that night. Tiana and Jasmine began searching, their flashlights dancing across labels and folders. The filing system was meticulous. Dates, times, and locations carefully noted. But something felt off. Jasmine's movements seemed increasingly jerky and uncertain. "I'm going to check the hallway," Jasmine whispered suddenly, her voice strained. "Make sure we're still clear." Before Tiana could respond, Jasmine slipped out. Luke frowned, but stayed focused on the search. Tiana pulled open another drawer, finding a folder marked with yesterday's date. A distant door slammed. Alarm bells shattered the silence, their shriek deafening in the confined space. Red emergency lights began flashing, turning the room into a crimson nightmare. "Run!" Luke shouted, drawing his concealed weapon. "It's a trap!" Heavy footsteps thundered down the stairs. Chief Mattis burst through the door, flanked by 2 officers with guns drawn. His face twisted into a cruel smile. "Well, well. Breaking and entering, Officer Travis? That's a serious offense." "This ends tonight, Mattis," Luke growled, positioning himself between Tiana and the chief. "No," Mattis replied calmly. "It ends exactly how I planned." A shot cracked through the air. Luke cried out, crumpling as blood spread across his thigh. Tiana screamed, backing away as the officers advanced. "The bathroom!" Luke gasped through clenched teeth. "Go!" Tiana bolted for the small half-bath they'd passed earlier. Bullets pinged off metal cabinets behind her. She slammed the door shut, scrambling onto the toilet to reach the narrow window above. Glass shattered as she kicked through it. She wiggled through the opening, feeling sharp edges tear at her clothes. The ground rushed up to meet her as she tumbled out. Shouts and flashlight beams cut through the darkness. Dogs barked in the distance. Tiana ran, branches whipping her face as she plunged into the woods. Her lungs burned with each breath, but she didn't dare slow down. The sound of pursuit grew closer. Searchlights swept through the trees, casting strange shadows that seemed to reach for her. She stumbled over roots and fallen branches, fighting back panic. A massive fallen oak appeared ahead. Tiana dove beneath it, pressing herself into the hollow space between trunk and earth. Dead leaves and spiders' webs clung to her hair and skin, but she didn't move. Boots crashed through the underbrush nearby. The beams of powerful flashlights probed the darkness. Tiana held her breath, tears streaming silently down her face as she thought of Luke bleeding on the floor, of Jasmine's betrayal, of everything that had gone so horribly wrong. With trembling fingers, she pulled out her phone. The screen's glow felt dangerously bright, but she had to let her father know. She typed a single word and hit send. Betrayed. Then she curled into herself, making her body as small as possible, and waited as the searchlights continued their relentless sweep through the dark forest. Dawn painted the sky in shades of gray as Tiana stumbled down her street. Her clothes were caked with mud, leaves tangled in her hair. Every step sent pain shooting through her twisted ankle. She'd spent the night moving from hiding spot to hiding spot, always staying ahead of the searching officers and their dogs. The front door burst open before she reached it. Samuel rushed out, gathering her into his arms. "Thank God," he whispered hoarsely. His eyes were red from a sleepless night. "I've been going crazy." Inside, Tiana's mother wrapped her in a blanket, brushing debris from her daughter's hair with shaking hands. The morning news played quietly on the TV, its cheerful tone a stark contrast to their grim faces. "Luke?" Tiana asked, her voice cracking. Samuel's jaw tightened. "Alive. They have him under guard at County General. The official story is he was shot resisting arrest during a break-in." He paused. "Jasmine's house is empty. The whole family vanished overnight." Tiana closed her eyes, the betrayal still raw. She was scared for her family. They threatened her. "I know, baby." Her mother's voice was gentle. "But that doesn't make it hurt any less." The TV's volume suddenly increased. "Breaking news in the East Haven police corruption scandal," the anchor announced. FBI Director Samuel Coleman has been suspended pending investigation into allegations of bribery and witness tampering. Sources claim Coleman attempted to pay off local officials to drop charges against his daughter. Samuel's phone buzzed. His face darkened as he read the message. "They're suspending me. Effective immediately." "But that's ridiculous," Tiana's mother protested. "They can't just—" "They can." And they did. Samuel's voice was tired. "This goes higher than we thought. Someone's pulling strings at the federal level." The news continued, showing Tiana's yearbook photo. Police are seeking 16-year-old Tiana Coleman, now identified as a member of a local gang. The teen is considered dangerous and may be armed. "A gang member?" Tiana's laugh was bitter. "I've never even gotten detention." "They're painting you as a threat," Samuel explained, making sure no one questions whatever they do next. A commotion outside drew them to the window. Police cars blocked both ends of the street. Officers in tactical gear approached houses, pounding on doors. "House-to-house search," Samuel muttered. "We need to go. Now." They grabbed pre-packed bags, Samuel had prepared for this possibility. The back door opened onto an overgrown alley. They slipped out just as heavy knocking rattled their front door. The morning was fully bright now as they hurried through back streets and unused paths. Samuel led them to Mrs. Hightower's church, one of their planned safe locations. But smoke rose from the church's location. As they got closer, Tiana's heart sank. The beautiful old building was a blackened shell, windows shattered, walls scorched. The smell of gasoline and burnt wood filled the air. Mrs. Hightower stood in the parking lot, surrounded by church members. Her face was streaked with soot, but her back was straight as she directed people to salvage what they could. "Firebombs," she said when she saw them. "Around 3 a.m. Thank the Lord no one was inside." She hugged Tiana fiercely. "I've been praying for you all night, child." "We need somewhere to lay low," Samuel said quietly. Mrs. Hightower nodded. "I know just the place. Sister Martha's old house. It's been empty since she passed, but we've kept it ready. Underground Railroad days taught us to always have a safe house." They followed her through a maze of side streets to a small, weathered house set back from the road. Inside, other families from the church had already gathered. Children slept on blankets, while adults spoke in hushed voices. "It's not much," Mrs. Hightower apologized, showing them to a back room. "But it's better than being out there right now." Tiana sank onto a worn couch, exhaustion finally catching up with her. Through the window, she could still see smoke rising from the church. Samuel paced, making quiet calls to contacts who might still be loyal. As evening approached, Mrs. Hightower suggested they return to pray in the church ruins. "Show them they can't break our spirit," she insisted. They walked carefully through the damaged sanctuary, glass crunching under their feet. The setting sun streamed through broken windows, casting long shadows across the debris-strewn floor. Mrs. Hightower knelt in front of the charred altar, her voice strong despite her tears. "Lord, give us strength for this battle. Protect these children of yours. Let justice prevail." Tiana knelt beside her, clasping the older woman's weathered hand. Outside, police sirens wailed in the distance. New checkpoints were being set up. The town was becoming a prison, tightening around them like a noose. But in the ruins of her beloved church, Mrs. Hightower continued to pray, her faith unshaken. And despite everything, the betrayal, the lies, the destruction, Tiana found herself joining in, drawing strength from the old woman's unwavering spirit. Through the broken windows, they could see police lights flashing, casting red and blue shadows across the scorched walls. The enemy's grip on East Haven was tightening, but here, in this sacred space, they found a moment of peace to gather their courage for whatever came next. Morning light filtered through the safe house's dusty windows. Tiana sat at the kitchen table, picking at a piece of dry toast. Her mother dozed fitfully on the couch, while Samuel studied a map of the town, marking police checkpoints with red X's. Mrs. Hightower burst through the back door, her eyes bright with purpose. "Child, I think I found something." She pulled up a chair next to Tiana, lowering her voice. "Remember Marcus? From my activist days in the 80s? Tiana shook her head, but Samuel looked up. "Marcus Johnson, the computer whiz who helped expose that corrupt judge." "The very same," Mrs. Hightower smiled. "He's retired now, but he never lost his touch with technology. I got through to him last night on a secure line. He thinks he might be able to recover your footage from the cloud backup." Hope flickered in Tiana's chest. "But they deleted it. They hacked my account. Honey, nothing on the internet is ever truly gone." Mrs. Hightower patted her hand. "Marcus says there are always traces, especially with automatic backups. He just needs a few hours with a secure connection." Samuel joined them at the table. "That's risky," They're monitoring all communications, which is why we need to set up our own network. Mrs. Hightower pulled out a worn notebook. Sister Martha's grandson left some equipment here, routers, cables, the works. He was studying computer science before... She trailed off, then squared her shoulders. Well, we can put it to good use now. They spent the next hour transforming the safe house's basement into a makeshift command center. Old card tables held borrowed laptops. Extension cords snaked across the floor. Elder Jenkins, a retired electrician, worked on stabilizing the power supply while his wife kept watch upstairs. Like old times, Mrs. Hightower mused, helping Samuel arrange signal boosters. Except back then, we just needed a mimeograph and some good running shoes. A soft knock at the basement door made everyone freeze. Mrs. Hightower gripped her cane tightly as Samuel eased the door open. Jasmine stood there, pale and trembling. Her eyes were red from crying. "Please," she whispered. "I need to talk to Tiana." Tiana's heart clenched. The memory of that night at the police chief's mansion was still fresh. The alarms, Luke's blood on the floor, running for her life while searchlights swept the woods. "You've got some nerve," Samuel growled, but Mrs. Hightower held up her hand. "Let her speak." Jasmine stepped into the basement, wringing her hands. "They threatened my little brother," she said, her voice breaking. "Said they'd plant drugs in his locker, get him expelled, ruin his whole future. I was so scared." She looked at Tiana pleadingly. "But what I did? I can't live with it. Luke got shot because of me. I want to make it right." "How?" Tiana's voice was hard. "How can you possibly make this right?" "I know things." Jasmine wiped her eyes. "About the police chief's network. About where they keep their real records. And..." She pulled out a small flash drive. "I copied some files before we went in that night. I was going to give them to them, but I couldn't. I just couldn't." Samuel took the drive, examining it carefully. "This could be a trap." "It's not," Jasmine insisted. "Test it, check it, whatever you need to do. Just please, let me help fix what I broke." Mrs. Hightower studied the girl's face for a long moment. "Fear makes people do terrible things," she said finally. "But courage means facing those mistakes and trying to make amends." She turned to Tiana. "What do you say, child?" Tiana looked at her former best friend, the girl who'd shared her secrets, her dreams, her fears, the girl who'd betrayed her, but also the girl who'd come back, risking everything to try to make it right. "Okay," Tiana said quietly. "You can help, but no more secrets. No more lies." Jasmine nodded tearfully. "I promise." They spent the afternoon setting up secure connections, using Jasmine's knowledge of the police department's systems to avoid detection. Elder Jenkins installed signal scramblers, while his wife kept the children upstairs occupied with quiet games and stories. As evening approached, Mrs. Hightower's phone buzzed, a special tone she'd set for Marcus. Everyone gathered around as she put it on speaker. "Got it," Marcus's gravelly voice announced. "The original footage, clear as day. Those idiots didn't know about tertiary backups. I've got the whole thing, from the first punch to the last kick." Tiana sagged with relief, her mother hugging her tight. Samuel's eyes gleamed with renewed purpose. "Now what?" Jasmine asked. Mrs. Hightower smiled grimly. "Now we plan. Mayor's holding that big town hall tomorrow, broadcasting live across the country, all about healing our community, and such nonsense." She squeezed Tiana's shoulder. "Seems like the perfect time to show everyone what really happened." They gathered around one of the laptops, watching a test file Marcus sent. There it was, the truth, in stark, undeniable detail. Every blow, every lie, every moment of brutality captured and preserved. "We'll need to be careful," Samuel warned. Security will be tight. Good thing I know every back entrance to that building, Mrs. Hightower said. Used to clean it during college. Some things you never forget. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Through the basement's small window, they could see police lights sweeping the darkening streets. But down here, surrounded by allies both old and newly redeemed, Tiana felt something she hadn't in days. Real hope. Dawn painted the safe-house kitchen in soft pink light. Tiana stood at the window, watching the sun creep over East Haven's rooftops. Behind her, Mrs. Hightower made coffee while Samuel cleaned his old service weapon. Just in case, he'd said. Jasmine sat at the table, memorizing the building layout one last time. You sure about this? Samuel asked, not looking up from his work. Once we start, there's no turning back. Tiana touched the flash drive hanging from her neck. I've never been more sure of anything. Mrs. Hightower handed her a mug of coffee, extra sweet the way she liked it. Drink up, child. Going to be a long morning. Luke hobbled in on crutches, his leg heavily bandaged. Dark circles ringed his eyes, but his voice was steady. The police scanner's quiet. Too quiet. They're waiting, Samuel said. Just like us. Jasmine spread out the town hall blueprints again. Okay, so the control room is here. She pointed to a small room off the main stage. 2 guards, usually. But during events, they're more focused on the crowd than backstage. That's where we'll patch in, Tiana said. She'd practiced the sequence 100 times. Connect the drive, override the feed, broadcast the truth. Simple, if everything went right. Deadly, if it didn't. Samuel's phone buzzed. He stepped into the hallway to take the call, speaking in low tones. When he returned, his face was grim but determined. Just got word from Judge Thompson at DOJ. She's got a team standing by, but they need evidence of civil rights violations before they can move. This video has to get out. It will, Tiana said firmly. Luke shifted on his crutches. I know I'm not much use like this, but I'm coming. I know how those officers think, how they'll react. You might need that. Mrs. Hightower nodded. We'll need every hand we can get, even broken ones. They spent the next hour going over the plan again. Elder Jenkins would create a distraction at the front entrance, while Mrs. Hightower led a group of protesters, giving Tiana and Jasmine cover to slip in through the service door. Samuel would monitor police movements from outside, coordinating with their allies through burner phones. Remember, Samuel told Tiana, checking her wire for the 3rd time, if anything goes wrong, you get out. No heroics. The footage won't help anyone if you're not around to testify about it. I know, Dad. She hugged him tight, breathing in his familiar cologne. But I won't run. Not this time. Mrs. Hightower gathered them in a circle, hands joined. Even Luke managed to balance on one leg to join them. Lord, she prayed, her voice strong and clear, protect these warriors for justice. Guide their steps, steady their hands, and let truth shine bright as morning. Amen, they whispered together. The sun climbed higher as they gathered their supplies. Burner phones, first aid kits, Mrs. Hightower's protest signs, Luke's badge, which he might need to bluff their way past security, Jasmine's laptop, loaded with Marcus's backup programs. Samuel helped Luke into the back of Elder Jenkins's van, while Tiana and Jasmine double-checked their equipment one last time. The flash drive felt heavy against Tiana's chest, weighted with purpose. I'm sorry, Jasmine said suddenly, her voice small. For everything. Tiana looked at her old friend, really looked at her. The fear was still there, but something else, too. Something stronger. I know, Tiana said. Now let's make it right. They drove separately, taking different routes to avoid attention. Through the van's windows, Tiana watched her town. Streets eerily empty. Police cruisers parked at every major intersection. state trooper checkpoints stopping random cars. The town hall loomed ahead, its stone steps already crowded with people. News vans lined the street, reporters doing live stand-ups about community healing and moving forward. Armed officers stood at every entrance, checking IDs and bags. "Ready?" Mrs. Hightower asked as they parked a block away. Tiana touched the flash drive again, thinking of every blow, every lie, every moment of injustice that had led to this morning. She thought of Luke's blood on the mansion floor, of her mother's tears, of Mrs. Hightower's firebombed church. "Ready," she said. They split up, merging with the growing crowd. Tiana and Jasmine stayed close together, two teenagers in church clothes, nothing suspicious about them at all. Luke limped along behind, his crutches marking a steady rhythm on the pavement. Samuel's voice crackled through their earpieces. "Security's heavy on the west side. Stay east." Mrs. Hightower's group began chanting, right on schedule. "No justice, no peace." Signs rose in the air. Cameras swiveled to capture the protest. Tiana and Jasmine slipped through the crowd, moving steadily toward the service entrance. Luke followed, his badge visible just in case. The morning sun blazed overhead, promising another hot day in East Haven. Inside the building, their footsteps echoed on marble floors. The main hall buzzed with voices as people found their seats. Through a crack in the stage curtain, Tiana could see the mayor at the podium, testing his microphone. Her heart pounded, but her hands were steady. The truth was coming. Ready or not, the mayor's voice boomed through the packed auditorium. "Today, we come together as one community to heal our divisions." Tiana and Jasmine pressed against the back wall, inching toward the AV booth. The crowd shifted restlessly in their seats, a mix of concerned citizens and uniformed officers. Captain Rollins stood near the stage, arms crossed, scanning faces like a predator. "Keep moving," Luke whispered through their earpieces. "Chief Mathis is getting ready to speak." Mayor Bixby droned on about unity and respect for law enforcement. Tiana's fingers traced the flash drive beneath her blouse. They were almost to the booth when she spotted Mrs. Hightower in the third row, surrounded by church elders. The old woman gave an almost imperceptible nod. "And now," the mayor said, "I'd like to introduce someone who's been working tirelessly to maintain peace and order. Our distinguished Chief of Police, Vernon Mathis." Applause scattered through the room as Mathis took the podium, his silver hair catching the stage lights. Tiana's bruises seemed to throb at the sight of him. "Just 3 more steps," Jasmine breathed. The AV booth door was propped open slightly. Inside, 2 technicians focused on their monitors. One reached for his coffee, giving Tiana and Jasmine their opening. They slipped in behind him. "Excuse me, you can't—" the tech started. Jasmine flashed Luke's badge. "Police business." "Step aside." Tiana's hands flew over the equipment, connecting the drive just as they'd practiced. Her heart hammered so loud she could barely hear Mathis talking about proper procedures and respecting authority. "Almost there," she whispered. The first tech reached for his radio. Jasmine grabbed his wrist. "I wouldn't." On stage, Mathis was building to his big moment. "And I want to address the unfortunate incident that's divided our town." Tiana hit enter. The giant screens behind Mathis flickered. His voice cut out. And suddenly, there it was. Crystal clear footage of that night. Officers surrounding her. The first brutal swing of the baton. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone screamed. On screen, Officer Durling's face twisted with rage as he kicked her ribs. The sound of impact echoed through the speakers. Blood sprayed across the pavement. "Shut it off!" Mathis roared, but his microphone was dead. The footage kept playing. Every blow, every threat, every moment of pure, undeniable truth. "That's enough!" Captain Rollins bellowed. He pointed at Tiana. "Arrest her! Now!" Officers surged toward the booth, but Mrs. Hightower was faster. She swung her heavy wooden cane like a baseball bat, catching the first officer in the knees. He went down hard. "Not this time!" she shouted. The room erupted. Elders grabbed folding chairs, forming a barrier between the police and the booth. Luke appeared from nowhere, tackling an officer despite his injured leg. People stood on their seats, phones recording everything. Chief Mathis himself vaulted off the stage, surprisingly agile for his age. He charged through the chaos, face purple with fury. His hand closed around Tiana's arm like a steel trap. "You little—" Tiana drove her knee up, just like her father had taught her. Mathis doubled over, but didn't let go. They struggled, crashing into the soundboard. Blood trickled from his split lip. "Let her go!" Jasmine screamed. She pulled out a small canister and sprayed directly into Mathis's face. The chief released Tiana, howling and clawing at his eyes. Pepper spray filled the air. All around them, the battle raged. Mrs. Hightower's cane cracked against riot shields. Elder Jenkins threw a chair at Captain Rollins. Church ladies with heavy purses swung at anyone in uniform who came near. "The video!" Tiana shouted over the chaos. "Keep it playing!" Jasmine scrambled back to the controls, fighting to keep the footage running as officers tried to reach the booth. Every screen still showed the truth. Impossible to ignore. Impossible to deny. More people joined the fight. A teenager in a Letterman jacket tackled an officer going for his taser. A grandmother in her Sunday best hit another with her umbrella. Years of fear and rage exploded into action. Tiana grabbed a microphone stand, using it to fend off two officers trying to flank her. Her muscles burned, but she wouldn't back down. Not now. Not ever again. "FBI! Everyone freeze!" Samuel's voice cut through the mayhem, but the fighting continued. Bodies pressed and swayed. Blood and pepper spray stung Tiana's eyes. Through the tears, she saw Mrs. Hightower swing her cane again, saw Luke struggling with an officer twice his size. The truth played on, endless and damning, as East Haven tore itself apart in the morning light. The glass doors of the town hall burst open as the fighting spilled into the morning sun. Cameras flashed, and news helicopters circled overhead, capturing every moment of East Haven's uprising. Tiana stumbled down the concrete steps, still gripping the microphone stand. Behind her, Mrs. Hightower's voice rang out, "Forward, children! Don't let them escape!" The crowd surged onto the plaza. Captain Rollins barked orders to his state troopers, who formed a defensive line with riot shields. But for every officer who stepped forward, 3 citizens stepped up to face them. "Stand down!" Rollins screamed, spittle flying. "This is your final warning!" An elderly white man in overalls pushed to the front. "My granddaughter showed me that video," he said, pointing a weathered finger. "You're the ones who need to stand down." More voices joined in. A Hispanic mother with tears streaming down her face. A white teenager in a fast food uniform. A black businessman in a torn suit. Years of fear and silence shattered as the people of East Haven found their voices. Chief Mathis, eyes still red from the pepper spray, tried to slip away through the chaos. But Luke, despite his injured leg, blocked his path. "Going somewhere, Chief?" Mrs. Hightower's church ladies formed a circle around Mathis, swinging purses and umbrellas. "The Lord's judgment has come," one shouted, landing a solid hit with her leather handbag. Jasmine appeared at Tiana's side, clutching a laptop. "Look!" She pointed to the news vans lining the street. "We're streaming live everywhere. They can't hide anymore." The sound of sirens cut through the noise. Black SUVs with federal plates roared up to the plaza, lights flashing. Samuel Coleman stepped out of the lead vehicle, flanked by stern-faced agents in FBI jackets. Behind them came a convoy of Department of Justice officials. "Federal agents!" Samuel's voice boomed through a megaphone. "Everyone stand where you are!" Captain Rollins sneered. "This is a state police matter. This is a federal investigation into civil rights violations, corruption, and conspiracy." Samuel cut him off. He pulled out a stack of papers. "I have warrants for Vernon Mathis, Walter Bixby, and Michael Rollins, plus about 30 of their officers." The crowd parted as federal agents moved in. Mayor Bixby tried to protest, straightening his tie with shaking hands. "Now, see here, this is completely—" Click. The handcuffs locked around his wrists. "Walter Bixby," the agent recited, "you're under arrest for conspiracy against rights, obstruction of justice, and misuse of public funds." More agents surrounded Chief Mathis. He didn't resist as they cuffed him, his face a mask of defeat. "You'll regret this, Coleman," he muttered. "The only regret," Samuel replied, "is that we didn't stop you sooner." Captain Rollins wasn't going quietly. He shoved an agent and reached for his weapon. 3 FBI officers tackled him to the ground. "Get off me!" he snarled. "I was maintaining order." "You were terrorizing innocent people," Samuel said as they hauled Rollins up. "And now you'll answer for it." The plaza erupted in cheers as the corrupt leaders were led away. Mrs. Hightower raised her cane in triumph, leading the crowd in an old freedom song. Even some of the local officers, those who had stayed silent out of fear, joined in the celebration. Luke limped over to Tiana, grinning despite his pain. "We did it. We actually did it." Jasmine hugged them both, sobbing. "I'm so sorry I betrayed you. I was so scared." "You came back," Tiana said, squeezing her hand. "That's what matters." The morning sun climbed higher as more arrests were made. FBI evidence teams entered the police station and chief's mansion. News crews interviewed witnesses, while federal civil rights investigators took statements. Elder Jenkins helped an agent document the church burning. The Hispanic mother described the threats against her family. The white teenager talked about watching officers plant evidence. Years of secrets poured out into the light. Tiana swayed on her feet, exhaustion finally catching up. The microphone stand slipped from her fingers. She had been running on adrenaline for so long, fighting so hard. Strong arms caught her as she stumbled. She looked up into her father's face, seeing the same tiredness there, the same relief. "Daddy," she whispered. "I've got you, baby girl," Samuel said, holding her close. "I've got you." Around them, the plaza filled with tears and laughter. Old women hugged young activists. Children danced between their legs. The morning air rang with freedom songs, with prayers of thanksgiving, with shouts of pure joy. Mrs. Hightower's voice rose above the celebration. "This is what justice looks like. This is what happens when we stand together." Tiana pressed her face into her father's chest, breathing in his familiar scent. Her muscles ached, her bruises throbbed, but her heart was light. They had done it. They had actually done it. Through her tears, she watched her community embrace in the morning light. Black and white, young and old, united at last. The truth had set them free. Dawn painted East Haven in shades of gold and promise. The morning news crews set up their equipment as citizens gathered on Main Street, many still wearing bandages from yesterday's battle. But their faces shone with hope. Tiana watched from her family's porch as neighbors helped clean up the debris. Mr. Jenkins and his son repaired broken windows, while Mrs. Thompson's church group distributed coffee and pastries. Even the police station looked different, with its new Community Oversight Board banner hanging proudly. "Look at this," Jasmine said, showing Tiana her phone. National news channels played footage of the corrupt officers being processed at federal court. Chief Mathis, Mayor Bixby, and Captain Rollins shuffled past cameras in orange jumpsuits, their empire crumbled to dust. "Still feels like a dream," Tiana admitted, touching the fading bruise on her cheek. "More like a nightmare we finally woke up from," Jasmine replied. Her family had spent the night in federal protective custody, but they were home now, surrounded by supporting neighbors. At 10 o'clock, crowds gathered at the courthouse steps. Mrs. Hightower stood tall in her Sunday best, one hand on her worn Bible. Judge Martinez, sent by the Department of Justice to oversee the transition, administered the oath of office. "I, Ernestine Marie Hightower, do solemnly swear." Her strong voice carried across the square. Tiana spotted tears in the eyes of elderly community members who had marched with Mrs. Hightower decades ago. Some held up faded photographs of past protests, connecting yesterday's victory to generations of struggle. After the oath, Mrs. Hightower addressed her city. "Today marks a new chapter for East Haven, not just because of who I am, but because of who we all are together. We've seen what happens when power corrupts. We've also seen what happens when people unite for justice." She introduced the new police chief, Patricia Rodriguez, a respected officer from the state capital with a record of community-oriented policing. Chief Rodriguez stepped forward, her expression solemn. "First, I want to apologize," she began. "What happened in this department was a betrayal of everything the badge should represent. Starting today, we rebuild trust through actions, not words." She outlined immediate reforms: civilian oversight, mandatory bias training, body camera requirements, and a zero-tolerance policy for excessive force. Luke received a standing ovation when Mrs. Hightower called him forward. His leg was still bandaged, but he stood straight as she pinned a civilian service medal to his chest. "Some say there are no good cops," she said. Luke Travis proved that integrity can wear a badge. He spoke briefly, voice thick with emotion. "I just did what was right, what we all should do when we see injustice." Samuel's reinstatement ceremony followed. The Attorney General herself flew in to restore his FBI credentials, praising his courage in facing down corruption within law enforcement. Director Coleman's experience will be invaluable as we address similar issues nationwide, she announced. Tiana felt pride swell in her chest as her father took the oath. He had risked everything for justice, just like she had. Now they could help others do the same. The afternoon sun found them at the burned church, where volunteers had already cleared the debris and started repairs. Mrs. Hightower insisted on holding a service despite the missing roof. Folding chairs filled the charred sanctuary as the congregation gathered. Jasmine sat between her parents, their hands clasped tight. Luke found a spot near the back, still uncomfortable with the tension. Samuel and Tiana's mother joined them in the front pew, while Mrs. Hightower took her familiar place at the pulpit. "Look around," she said, gesturing to the open sky above them. They tried to destroy this place because they feared what it represented: community, unity, strength. But they didn't understand. The church isn't these walls. It's the people inside them. She led them in "We Shall Overcome," the old freedom song rising from the ruins. Tiana closed her eyes, remembering the fear and pain of the past weeks, the betrayals and beatings, the moments of despair, but also the courage she had discovered, the bonds that had grown stronger through fire. A cool breeze rustled through the empty window frames, carrying the scent of fresh paint and sawdust from the reconstruction. Children played tag between the pews, while their parents discussed plans for the new community center. The mood was peaceful but purposeful. This was just the beginning of real change. Mrs. Hightower called for prayer, and the congregation bowed their heads. "We remember those who came before us," she intoned, "those who marched and bled and died for freedom. And we promise to honor their sacrifice by continuing their work, wherever injustice remains. Tiana felt her father's strong hand on her shoulder, her mother's fingers intertwined with hers. Around them, the community that had fought together now prayed together, their voices joining in a soft Amen. Several weeks later, the Alabama sun beat down on the National Memorial for Peace and Justice. Thousands gathered beneath the rusted steel monuments, each bearing names of lynching victims. The crowd stretched far beyond the memorial's boundaries, a sea of faces united in purpose. Tiana stood at the podium, her hands steady despite the weight of the moment. Her bruises had faded, but the memory of that night remained sharp in her mind. The crowd fell silent as she adjusted the microphone. "My name is Tiana Coleman," she began, her voice clear and strong. "6 weeks ago, I was walking home from work when 3 police officers decided I didn't belong in my own neighborhood." She paused, letting the words sink in. "They beat me, arrested me, and tried to silence me. But they didn't know one thing. I come from a long line of people who refuse to be silenced." In the front row, Samuel sat tall in his FBI director's suit, holding Mrs. Hightower's weathered hand. Jasmine and her family were there too, along with Luke, who still walked with a slight limp. Behind them, buses from East Haven had brought hundreds of community members to witness this moment. "What happened to me wasn't unique," Tiana continued. "It happens every day in cities and towns across America. But what made East Haven different was how we responded. When they tried to divide us, we united. When they used violence, we chose courage. When they spread lies, we demanded truth." She gestured to the memorial columns surrounding them. "These monuments remind us that injustice isn't new. Each name here represents someone who faced worse than what I faced, who didn't survive to tell their story. I stand here because of them, because of every person who refused to accept oppression as normal." The crowd murmured in agreement as Tiana acknowledged the elders present. "To the generation that marched before us, thank you. You taught us how to stand up, how to organize, how to fight back with dignity." Mrs. Hightower and her contemporaries showed us that age is no barrier to bravery. When our church burned, they didn't hide. They led the charge. Mrs. Hightower dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, her other hand still gripping Samuel's. "To the young people watching, you have more power than you know. Your phones can capture truth. Your voices can shake systems. Your determination can move mountains. But remember this: real change happens when generations work together. The elders' wisdom combined with youth's energy. That's an unstoppable force." Tiana described the night of the town hall confrontation, how grandmothers with canes fought alongside teenagers with smartphones. "Some say violence never solves anything," she said. "But defending yourself isn't violence. It's survival. Standing up to oppression isn't violence. It's justice." She spoke about Luke, the young officer who chose conscience over career. About Jasmine, who overcame fear to do what was right. About her father, who proved that working within the system doesn't mean accepting its flaws. "East Haven is changing," Tiana continued. "We have our first black female mayor. Our police department answers to the community it serves. Our children walk home without fear. But we're not done. Across this country, other communities face the same battles we faced." The sun had shifted, casting long shadows from the memorial columns. Each steel rectangle seemed to lean forward, as if the names etched upon them were listening too. "Some people call me brave," Tiana said, shaking her head. "But bravery isn't about being fearless. It's about being scared and acting anyway. It's about looking at something wrong and saying, 'No more.' It's about reaching out to others when you feel most alone." She described the rebuilt church, now a symbol of resilience. The new community center rising where the police chief's mansion once stood. The weekly dinners where officers and citizens share meals and stories. Building trust, one conversation at a time. Change isn't just about big moments, she explained. It's about daily choices. It's about seniors mentoring youth, and youth respecting seniors. It's about neighbors watching out for each other. It's about remembering that justice isn't a destination. It's a journey we take together. Tiana looked out at the crowd, at faces young and old, from every background. She saw hope in their eyes, the same hope that had carried her through those dark days, the same hope that had sustained generations of fighters for justice. Today, standing in this sacred space, I make you a promise, she declared. East Haven's story won't end with us. We'll help other communities find their voice. We'll stand with them as others stood with us. Because justice isn't just about punishing the guilty, it's about building something better in place of what was broken. The breeze carried her words across the memorial grounds, past the steel columns with their solemn names, beyond the ancient trees that had witnessed so much history. In the audience, people reached for each other's hands, strengthened by the bonds of shared purpose. So I ask you today, what will you do when you witness injustice? Will you turn away? Or will you stand and say, no more? Will you reach across generations to build something stronger than fear? Will you add your voice to the chorus demanding change? I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.